Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Six Figure Author Podcast, the show that helps you take your writing career to the next level. I'm Andrea Pearson, and I'm here with my two co-hosts.
I'm Lindsay Baroker.
And I'm Joe Lallo.
And today we're actually interviewing Lindsay. If you don't know who she is, she's one of the co-hosts for our podcast. And most of our questions come from listeners, but one or two of them come from Joe and me. We'll be talking about genre hopping, long-term success of short stories, advertising, long series versus short series, and a bunch of other fun stuff. Plus marketing, and some marketing. Before we go into that, I told Lindsay, I was like, if we mention marketing, everybody's going to listen to the whole show.
You think so? We should say that you guys get your turn too. So they're wondering why I'm so special. It's like, no,
you
I'm
are
just
so
first.
special. I was like, we're going to interview Lindsay. Lindsay's like, we're not going to interview Lindsay. No, I like the idea of having discussions. So we will probably get in a little bit of discussing from me and Joe, but this is primarily a Lindsay interview episode. And those of you in the Facebook group, you had the chance to ask questions from her. We do have a whole ton of questions, so we probably won't be able to get to all of them, but we will add those to a future Lindsay episode. And if you want to ask questions for any of those future ones, then make sure you join our Facebook group. And they're not all just going to be Lindsay episodes. I want to make clear we will be doing one for Joe in a couple of weeks, and then about a month after that, or in about a month, one for me. Anyway, so let's go into news, if that's okay with you guys. And I think, Joe, you can go ahead and go first on that.
Okie dokie. So I've had some of my worst productivity weeks in years the last couple of weeks. I can't imagine why. There's anxiety due to just global events, which is sort of always lately, but more acutely recently. Also, I live with my brother and sister-in-law, and if you have particularly good speakers, you might hear thumping upstairs because everybody's home. And that's a little distracting, and it will become more distracting because to varying degrees, both my brother and my sister-in-law are essential workers. So pretty soon I'm going to have to pick up some slack on keeping an eye on my nephew. But, everybody's doing their part. Book-wise, Book of Deacon 6 is just about ready to release. I think the official release date is the 16th. And I'm in the midst, between when we record this and when it goes live, I will have received an international book bub on my Book of Deacon boxed set. So we'll see how that does. I'm currently running, I mentioned last time, I'm running a carousel ad for the entire series because the entire series has been discounted. The first book has always been free, but now the box set is 99 cents, and each successive book in the 6-book series is $1 more expensive than the previous one. So book 2 is 99 cents. It works all the way up to the $5 new release. By the numbers, this is a Facebook ad, by the way. By the numbers, it's doing okay. It's kind of hard to track exactly how well it's doing it because obviously the most conversion is going to be on the free book, and you basically can't track how well a free book thing does. I mean, I know I'm getting tons of clicks, but it looks like it's going to have a positive return on investment. It's not going to be a bonanza, but nothing seems to be a bonanza these days. And also, I'm creeping toward the end of Free Range 6, which is going to be the next book in the year of 6. And I'm already starting to make plans on what I'm going to do for that release. I'm not going to do exactly the same thing because for a reason I think I know, Free Range series traditionally it's done better wide than on Amazon. Specifically, it's done extremely well on Apple. And this is the series that had an editorial review on Apple back in 2012 with the first book in the series. And they have traditionally, I've spoken to them to do a separate, I've done promotions through Apple with Free Range more often than any of my other series. So I'm going to probably reach out to them once I'm finished. I know how long the book is and therefore when the cover is going to be in and all that stuff, and see if I can set up what I've done in the past with them as a time-limited exclusivity where they get it 2 weeks early. We'll see if I do that again. I might talk to them about doing the same thing, discounting the entire series, but maybe see if they can push a little bit the fact that the whole series is discounted. We'll see. All that is maybe. I haven't sent any emails yet. But yeah, that's where I am. That's the busyness that is my life.
All right. Well, I just want to say for you and for everyone out there listening, I think everybody's struggling with productivity right now. I saw something on Facebook like, you have all the time in the world right now to learn a new language or learn an instrument or learn this. I was like, man, people are so worried about everything right now. Nobody's trying to learn any instruments. I mean, congratulations if you can do that, but it's okay if you're just treading water. I think we're all like that right now. For my news, you've probably heard this. I think Joanna's mentioned it on the Creative Pen too, but ACX is taking a long time to approve audiobooks right now. I've been waiting almost 2 months for one that it's disappointing because everybody from my narrator to the proofreaders to me hurried up to get it done early so it could go live with the book launch of the new series, which was February 28th. And it's April 6th. It's, like I said, almost 2 months since I turned it in. And nothing. I emailed them and got a canned response, and they really fell apart before any of this virus stuff started. So I don't know what's going on over there, but it is a shame because you do so much better if you can get your audiobook out there at the same time as their launch when your book's still selling well. In other news, you guys have probably heard that Amazon has been offering 2 free months of KU. And, you may be thinking, well, this is a really good time. People are going to be just doing the subscription stuff now while money's tight. So, I've seen a few people think, well, maybe I should pull my stuff from Wide and go all in with KU right now. My thought is maybe or maybe not, because Amazon, they can adjust the pot every month, and they do, but it's important to remember that the more pages that are read overall, the less we get for page reads in general, unless they throw in a whole bunch of extra money. So, do whatever seems right for you. I'm thinking of doing one of those cheap box sets with my pen name, because those books have just kind of been languishing as I've ignored them, but they are in KU, so it doesn't involve pulling anything, just getting a new cover. But I am going to wait a month or two and kind of see what the payout is for March and April before I do anything drastic. Finally, I wanted to mention, I got this email a while ago, but we had a whole bunch of interviews lined up in March, but this is from Google Play. They just wanted to let people know that they've now made it easier to make an account. You can visit g.co/play/publish, and I'll put that in the show notes, to create an account in a few easy steps. There's no longer an invitation code that may or may not go missing in the mail when you're setting up an account. And they also have a 7% affiliate program. If that's something you want to do, you can sign up for. So when you same as Amazon, if you direct sales to them and use that affiliate code, you can get a little extra money besides just the sale of your books. And they promise they're going to have more tools coming to help us promote books. So I've talked about before, Google Play actually does pretty well for me, considering I don't usually link directly to anything there. I have started linking directly to that and Kobo and all those, but yeah, it's something to watch if you are Wide and that's something of interest. We've mentioned before, it's linked to the Android phone, so it actually has a pretty big user base just by default. So that's all I will speak about in the news portion today.
My phone, every time when you guys hit your mute buttons, is it like ringing for you? Because Zoom is making an alert for me every time I hit it. They're saying no. Well, something's going on. That's annoying. Anyway, so if you can hear that on the listener end, I apologize for that. That's kind of annoying. But okay, so my news is my husband and I finished Raven Huntress and handed it off to my editor. This is the first book that we've co-written together, and it went actually better than I expected, given the fact that we, haven't done this before. There were a couple of little arguments here and there. It's kind of fun because I'm pretty sure other co-writers would never argue about some of the things that we've argued about, but it's been really awesome just having him. I mean, he was super involved in the earlier books in the series because it's about a guy who is very similar in personality to my husband. So I was always like, okay, so put yourself in this situation. How would you handle this? And anyway, so we're starting the next book in the series tomorrow. We've been brainstorming over the last few days and outlining, and I'm pretty excited about it. But we found out that while brainstorming the end of this 6-book series, it's actually a 7-book series. And so my series, I can't seem to go shorter than 6 books. I think I've done the local elementary school we work with, we did 3 books for that series, and that was the shortest I've ever been, and not for any of my adult or teen books. But it's been a lot of fun. We're shifting things around and getting super excited about it. Though I am not going to be putting this one up for pre-order. I will tell you right now, this one is going to go when it goes. I'm not going to commit myself to anything. I mean, yeah. I mentioned in our last episode, maybe 2 weeks ago, or was it last week? I don't remember, but my Stuck Inside book event, when I was putting all my books up on promotion, that went really well. It was really nice to be able to help people with their boredom while also helping me with, royalties and things like that. But it also gave me the opportunity to talk about something other than stress, current book projects, and health situations. And then on a personal note, we are taking the baby into the doctor today for lots of reasons. We don't know what's going on. He's just been all over the place health-wise, and it's just been, the last few days have been really hard. So just looking forward to getting back into normal routine stuff. And like Lindsay and Joe were saying, it's really hard to concentrate right now, but just doing our best, keeping up with everything. We're going to go ahead and go into the listener questions now. And the first one is from Jane Hawk. And this is for Lindsay. And she asks, what differences have you found marketing-wise between your different genres? For example, urban fantasy requires higher AMS bids. Sci-fi romance does really well with cover reveals, etc.
All right. Well, before I answer that, I just want to say I hope the kiddo's okay. This is not the virus stuff, right? This is kind of ongoing.
No, it's not the virus. He's just been, he's struggled. He's gone back and forth between like severe constipation and severe diarrhea. And we don't know if it's food related, allergy related. He was really constipated and eating jars of prunes and still having problems. So we don't know if he swallowed something and he's got like an obstruction or something, so we're just going to hopefully just go get him checked out and see if that, and of course he's, all the allergy stuff still. So,
okay. All right. Well, hopefully that will be okay, and they'll come up with a solution that will be helpful. To answer Jane's question, what have I found between? So I've done, let's see now, space opera, steampunk, kind of epic fantasy, sci-fi romance under the pen name, and new series is urban fantasy. So I've jumped around quite a bit. They're all under the umbrella of sci-fi and fantasy, but like Jane said, like I've mentioned before, I've definitely found that the bid costs are higher in urban fantasy. I have seen things come down, as we mentioned, especially on Facebook and even on Amazon this month. Suggested high bids, have come down a little bit, but they're definitely, I look over, I still have some ads going on epic fantasy kind of box set, and like, wow, those are half, they get a lot more clicks because it's a box set and they're half the price, so that's something to keep in mind. I did try to go lower when I first started with the urban fantasy, kind of experimenting, like how, we just had Brian on and he's talking about 30-cent clicks. I'm like, okay, I tried to get some 75-cent clicks and I barely got any traction even with a 99-cent book. And for me, I'm not trying to like spend 2 hours to make 2 book sales. I got to monitor how much time I spend on this stuff. So I really want to see a lot of impressions, a lot of clicks, and a lot of sales for the time I invest into ads, because there's definitely a would I be better off writing element to that. And so I found that, yes, more expensive in more popular genres, which shouldn't be surprising at all. I've also noticed that some genres seem to do better on some advertising platforms versus others. I think I've talked about this before, but it's been a while since I did sci-fi romance with the pen name, but when I ran those on BookBub, I really had a great conversion compared to like my epic fantasy. And I think that was because BookBub doesn't have sci-fi romance as a category, so their subscribers were probably like looking for it but not getting much of it. So that's something to keep in mind maybe with BookBub. If you're sort of between niches and giving people something they're not seeing in the regular deals, it might have a shot to do better. And I've heard romance authors say that Facebook really does well for them. I'm doing pretty well with a box set, 99-cent box set right there right now. Like, it's hard to know if that's because, I think it's more that it's just a really good deal right now rather than epic fantasy is super popular. We've talked about how urban fantasy can be a little difficult on Facebook because there aren't very many authors you can target. It's kind of a newish genre. You can't go back to like Tolkien, for as you can with epic fantasy. And I don't know, I feel like, Joe was talking about how with his steampunk, how it's done really well on Apple. I feel that to some extent too, like my epic fantasy is generally done better wide than my space opera. And it's hard to say that, I don't have enough space opera series out there wide yet to really see if that's for sure. But I've certainly found that I do believe that on some stores and in some countries, that certain genres are probably going to be do better than others. Anything said in America is probably not going to sell as well in Europe. And I think it was Michael Anderle had an interesting theory about sci-fi, that it was more popular in countries that actually have space programs, which, that can make a lot of sense, that people are just more excited in general. Obviously, I mean, the space-centric stuff, not just necessarily near future sci-fi. So that was an interesting theory, and I could see that being a case, more so than in countries where they're not worrying about that yet or don't have a program. I feel that if you're in a newer or smaller niche, one where there's a really hungry audience, that you can still get away with like less rocking covers. As an example, just kind of recently, I've seen some kind of ridiculous stuff under the lit RPG, ridiculous covers, I should say, not books or blurbs or anything like that, that I actually clicked on them because at first glance I was like, are these being like click-botted to the top with click bars, because the covers are so bad. It's like somebody with a, crayon could have done better. But you look in and the reviews seem legitimate, and it looks like, and these authors have published other books by this point, so it looks like it's just an example of a niche where the audience is so hungry that they're not caring about the covers. They're just like, and maybe the stories are so wonderful too that their word of mouth is helping them sell. So, but I would say, still you're going to have a lot better shot if you have great covers. Obviously, that can't hurt anything, but it's probably, there's still niches and genres out there where if you poke around, it's going to be a little easier overall if people are looking for it and they're not finding what they want. And that may just be a trope within a niche too. I remember on our old show, Sci-Fi Marketing Podcast, we had a guest on that was doing sci-fi romance, a really specific, like aliens, I don't know. It was very specific niche that was underserved, and she was doing really well right out of the gate. You asked specifically about marketing, but I'm going to say too, with stories, I feel that in some genres they're a little more forgiving, the audience, about not being specifically to a certain trope or leaning heavily on expected character types and stories. Like I did pretty well with both of my space opera series. And then the second one in particular really has a lot of atypical heroes. The heroes are roboticists, which sounds great for sci-fi, but you got a lot more like Han Solo types out there. I would say we're way more typical, or Mal and Firefly, sort of the captain or the pilot character. But especially in the first couple books, it wasn't very typical of a space opera plot. It still did pretty well, I thought. I think with other genres, you may be a little more limited with how far you can stray away from the expected if you really want to sell well. All right, that's enough babbling on that one.
Okay, so the next question is from Mark Wilhelm, and he says, to piggyback on this great question for Lindsay, what advice in general do you have for authors who are interested in writing in both fantasy and sci-fi genres? Would you suggest using pen names? Would you suggest segmented mailing lists? Any other advice?
First off, sci-fi and fantasy are not too far apart, so I don't think you need to feel compelled. Like the reason I did the pen name was more that it was going up a big heat jump in level of sex scenes on the page, more so than that I thought it would be a problem for my audience, for me doing sci-fi romance when I had at that point only done fantasy. So that's a reason, if you do kind of PG stuff and then you're jumping up to R or X, maybe you might want to do it no matter whatever else I say here. But having done the pen name thing, having done it now, I don't know if I would do it again, because right now my pen name is barely selling because I've basically set it aside and haven't published anything new in 2 years. I may, like I said, try a box set and just see if it would be a case of the way things are with KU and page reads and getting credit for up to 3,000 pages right now, that it might be worth putting some advertising money into it to see if like a complete series box set could do well. But in general, if you are trying to manage 2 names at once or more than 2 names, it's very difficult, even if you're prolific, to keep both selling, keep putting out releases in both so that things don't fall way off on the other one. When you're all under one name, like I have series that I hardly ever promote, and it's been a long time since I got even like a free Booksy or something on the perma-free book one, but those series continue to sell to some extent because people that come into my new stuff, they read that and then they go back and look at what else I have. If you've got this hidden pen name that's kind of hard for them to find, they're never going to be led back to that by your newer work. So basically it's just tough to keep 2 going at once. If you do want to, the main reason right now, and this is a very Amazon thing, so if you're wide, I probably wouldn't bother at all. But if you're focusing on Amazon and KU and that kind of thing right now, that's when the pen name can kind of mess things up. Or if you're just genre jumping under your own name, like I found with doing the new urban fantasy series, as I knew would happen, a lot of my readers that came over from the last series I wrote, which was the space opera, were purchasing the fantasy. And I definitely saw cases where like people would get sci-fi readers that don't know me would get emails about my urban fantasy because Amazon thought, well, these sci-fi readers are reading this, so maybe these other sci-fi readers are reading it. Probably don't want to. And I saw the auto ads, and Brian was mentioning how these can go way astray. I think Craig Martell said something like, yeah, I saw your new book on my page. And I'm like, wait a minute, you write military sci-fi? Why is my new urban fantasy book being advertised on that page? And I even went in and tried to like do the negative targeting to make that not happen. But anyway, the long story is that if you're worried about hoping the Amazon algorithms will figure out what you're selling and help promote it, it helps to not have that history of a lot of sales in another genre. But what you might want to do is something like we had Jasmine Walt on, and she mentioned that she started a new pen name when she was having that problem with not being focused who it's marketing to, who Amazon was marketing it to, and she did that for like a year. And then now though, she's claimed those books under her name so her fans can find them. So that could be a route to go. If you do want to try to do the fresh start, just think, well, maybe in a year I will put my name on it and claim it on my author name so people can find them. So kind of a ramble.
So actually, and clarifying, have you told your sci-fi fantasy readers about your pen names? I mean, have you like told them that you've got 2 pen names? And
yeah, the first 3 months or so, it was kind of an experiment, so I didn't tell anyone. I just kind of wanted to prove to myself that, yeah, you can still start from scratch and do pretty well. And then I told people on my mailing list, but that requires that people remember, because I don't mention it very often. Every now and then, like if I'm going to launch a new box set, I'll probably go to my sci-fi people and say like, hey, by the way, if you need more to read, I have these smutty sci-fi romances over here in addition to my more PG space opera that you've been following along with. And it's on my website. If people hunt down, like read the list of books, I'm like, yeah, by the way, I'm also this character, but this author, also character, I
you're
guess.
a character.
It's a character. So I have, but I don't, it's not like blazing the first thing you see when you come to my website. Also, Ruby Lyons Drake, make sure to get those books too. So
you just tell them about the heat level then when you said smutty. I mean, so that's kind of the way you tell them. I mean, you don't.
I just say that there's sex scenes on the page.
Okay.
I try not to, I say smutty jokingly, as we're talking.
Okay.
But I'm not trying to like condemn anything, because, or these are like dirty, naughty pleasures or whatever, It's just, it's a contentious point with some readers. So I try to make it clear, like some readers, some of the most vocal reviews will be about like cursing or not cursing or sex or not sex. And it's like, what? Okay, well, how was the story? Was the story okay? So
it's so true. Like, yeah, I've got readers who read erotica all the way through very, very clean, but I have to be so careful by, saying this book I read is very clean, or this book I read had this much heat level in it, and so I was just wondering, do you have readers who read the other series and are surprised by content and then get mad at you about that?
Yeah, I kind of warn them. I've also used Mark Lefebvre's term active romance, which I like.
Although, I've never heard that.
Yeah, though that may not be as explicit about what exactly is going on.
Yeah, her active romance is like straight erotica with a little sci-fi in.
Well, yeah, and then what I consider to be naughty stuff, people that actually read romance and read all that stuff are like, whatever, that's so tame, there wasn't enough of it. Like, so it's just, there's so many levels of what people want and expect.
Yeah,
all that.
Okay, so our next question is from Fatima Al, I'm guessing is how the last name would be said. My question for Lindsay is how her latest launch, Sinister Magic, compares to her launches in the other genres. She discussed how advertising urban fantasy is more expensive, but are there other things she's noticed? Has she done anything different for this launch? And we did do a and she enjoyed the book, which is awesome. We did do an episode, the bonus one, where we went in depth into our launches, but I did like how she was like, have you noticed other things that are different between the two?
Yeah, thanks for checking it out, Fatima. That's really cool. Appreciate that. And I guess we're about a month since we recorded this show with KM Shea. So I would say so far, like I said, I have spent a lot more on this one, from everything from the covers were expensive to the advertising is expensive. And I was trying to just give it as good of a shot as I could, because this was my first time going to this subgenre of fantasy, and it's the most competitive one, and I knew it would be that way. So I wanted to give it as good of a shot as I could, but it has not made more money than my other launches. I would say I've done like 4 series in the last a little over 2 years, since the end of 2017, beginning of 2018 was when I launched Heritage of Power. It's probably in 3rd place right now. I just published the 3rd book as far as, how much it's making so far. And all the prices were all the same. All 4 of those series, I started with a 99-cent book 1 and then went up to $4.99 for the following books. All 4 were launched into KU. So I'd say third place out of the 4 series I've launched in that time. Book 1 actually sold really well out of the gate. I would say the sell-through hasn't been as high as normal for me with book 2 and 3 so far. That said, book 2 came out like March 15th or something. So right as the COVID stuff is exploding, and book 3 now it just came out. We're in April now, fully in this stuff. And I don't want to use that as an excuse, but I'm just keeping it in mind, as it is possible that is a reason people aren't wanting to make the jump from 99 cents to $4.99 as much right now as they might have in the past. I was thinking about the other day, this is the first out of these 4 series, this is the only one that didn't have like a cliffhanger ending at the end of book 1. I really wanted to do a standalone stories for this series. There's like ongoing, romance and stuff that's developing over time, and a few mysteries and stuff, but I just saw them more as closer to like kind of a mystery detective individual story in each book, rather than like the space opera I'm about to finish up. I got one more after the one that's coming out. That's very much that's almost like an episode, a season of TV. It's like cliffhanger, cliffhanger, cliffhanger. Like, even though there's a story in each book and it should feel like a complete story, it's very much they're trying to save their, save the political system, get back to their world, that kind of thing. So as much as readers complain about that stuff, I feel it works. I feel that it's more apt to get people to drive on to the next one. Whereas if you have a complete story, that they might be like, well, I might read some more of these down the road, but I'm not like dying. I don't have to see what happens next. So that could also be a factor. Feedback has actually been pretty good overall. I've certainly had a few readers say, well, it's not my thing. But I feel like I've had more overall say they really liked it. And this is also not just a departure in genre for me, but it's a switch to first person, which I hardly ever do. And it's a little more edgy of a character for me. Somebody was saying she's not as vulnerable as some of my other characters. And that was a bit of a nod to the genre and just kind of how she popped into my mind. She's kind of a bounty hunter, hard ass type character. I tried to give her some vulnerabilities and the usual, but I can see where some people really love it and others are like, it's not quite like your other stuff. But it seems like the first book did quite well and the reviews overall were good. And I heard from a lot of people that they really liked it. So I don't think that the story is worse than my other, than 3 out of the 4 necessarily. So it's just new genre for me. I'd say if I did it again, I would probably just have planned to commit to 2 like urban fantasy series, with the first one being like, I'm just building my readership. I'm not worrying about it. I'm not going to spend a fortune on it. And then maybe for the second launch, go bigger. But I'm very much, I try to have the business mindset whenever I can. But as far as just coming up with the stories, I have to do what excites me and follow my muse to some extent. So I guess those are the differences. And, it's just me, my specific story. I'm not trying to like say you'll have the same experience if you jump into urban fantasy, or if you jump into a new genre that's more competitive than other stuff you've done.
Yeah, it definitely seems like it doesn't matter how thoroughly you document your own experiences, someone's going to come along with an exactly opposite experience. The market is such that can happen. All right, so we had a question from Jason Morrow. When switching genres, does it seem to matter how much a genre may be saturated, so long as you have a large enough email list to get you through the first 60 days before the Amazon cliffs. Chris Fox talks about how he doesn't even send some of his books to certain email lists so as to not skew the Amazon algorithm. Do you, or any of you, follow that philosophy when switching genres?
I will answer first, but remind me, you guys, since it was for any of you, you guys are welcome to jump in too. I would say when switching, some of this is going to depend on how big of a readership you already have. Because like I said, I can't at this point hide this from readers. I don't really have the option to just, I'll put a book out and maybe nobody will notice. I feel fortunate to be in the position that people notice and they go out and buy it right away, even if I haven't said anything about it. It's just like, oh, surprise book. I don't actually know how, well, this time Amazon sent out a new release alert before I was ready. So there's that too, but I swear people find stuff even before you've like claimed it for your author page or anything like that. But I think what you'll see is that your email list will get you through like 2 to 3 days if you stagger when it comes out, or if you've got multiple lists. If you've got newsletter swaps lined up with other authors, maybe those can help you keep the book selling for another week. But those are never going to sell to as high of a degree as like an organic mailing list that you've built yourself. I would say it's more your ad budget than anything that's going to matter as far as can you keep this selling for a couple weeks to maybe help the Amazon algorithms kick in and help you start selling. It starts selling a little more on its own. I feel like that's getting harder and harder to have that happen. Like, I feel like the stuff I see that actually seems like it's sticking, you realize you go book, it's like $0. And I'm like, oh, well, this is an Amazon Prime read. So it's getting a free downloads too from all Amazon Prime readers that are interested in it at the beginning of the month. And there's just so many people advertising right now. I'm sure it still happens. I'm sure people get sticky, and it's at different levels too. Like, what do you consider it? Are you a failure if you're not, under 250 in the entire Amazon store, or would you be stoked to be sticky at 10,000? So it kind of depends on your goals too. 60-day cliffs, I've not observed the cliffs so much myself. I feel that you get about 3 months where Amazon tags your book as a new release, and I think that can help because that shows up in advertising when you're down there in the sponsored ads. It's like new release, which is pretty exciting. Whereas I found that I started advertising a little bit when it was a pre-order, and I don't think seeing pre-order helps anybody want to click that. They're like, oh, look, this book looks great, but it's not available, so why would I go buy it? With Chris Fox's advice to do, I think and I think David Gaughran has talked about this too, how much it can hurt you, especially if you have like a nonfiction mailing list and you send these guys both do stuff for authors, books for authors. And if they send out their space opera to that list, that can get you in trouble with the algorithms, even more so to the extent than that's probably worse than having a urban fantasy book go to a space opera fan. So I do try to start, like with this series, I tried to start selling, advertising. I used Amazon ads when it wasn't a pre-order, hoping that I could start getting it associated with other urban fantasy authors ahead of time. But I found that in February when I was doing this, Amazon just seemed really slow. They were playing with a lot of stuff, and maybe they still are, with the also bots. There was a lot of tinkering on the site, and maybe that affected things. But it was a couple weeks before the book even started showing up in the also bots on other books, like the ones I was specifically targeting. And I could see in the keywords I'd actually sold books, like it worked. I was, selling my books to this urban fantasy author that only had a pre-order up. But it's tough right now. If Amazon's at all slow, and every now and then, a couple times a year, it seems like they start to tinker with things and things can slow down. It can be really hard to keep things rolling until maybe it kicks in a little bit. But I would say that I've had this belief for a long time, and this has made me a little more solid on it, that it's just always going to be easier to be a big fish in a little pond than trying to just explode on the scene in a big ocean of competition. I'm not saying it can't be done, but it's not easy. And it is one of those things where you got to hit not just to market, but maybe even the zeitgeist a little bit, like what is going to be the market for this year, get a little bit lucky, or just be really, you're just that good at figuring out what trends are coming. Did you guys want to answer this one too?
Oh, I was just going to say, or be really prolific, because it doesn't matter if you're prolific and a good enough writer. You can just, you write what you want to write and you will find an audience. I mean, that's probably what Dean Wesley Smith would say. It'd be screw Amazon algorithms and write what you want to write. And he's prolific enough where, that works in his advantage, favor, whatever. And Joe, I have something I can say, but you can go ahead first and then I'll go after you.
Okay, I would just say that if you're hoping for a mailing list to get you through 60 days, you will need to have a remarkable mailing list. And I could just say specifically for myself, because I built out my mailing list unsegmented and I was dancing back and forth between sci-fi and fantasy from the beginning, it never really paid off for me to try to target one group or another, especially since my books are similar enough in like character and presentation that I get a greater than average overlap between my audiences.
Yeah, and that's really nice. Lindsay, did you have a rebuttal?
Well, I was just going to add that to some extent you can write whatever you want and build up a followership. There's like we've talked about the Venn diagram, what you love versus what the market wants, and kind of finding that place to overlap. I think you do still have to be somewhat commercial with what you're writing if you want it to actually sell books and succeed. So there's
Yeah,
that.
and I agree with that. And it's also, I mean, a lot of our listeners only have, I mean, between 0 and 5, maybe 10 books. And it takes time to get a career established. And so if you're expecting things to go big in the beginning, you're probably going to be disappointed anyway. So, I mean, just write what you love, because if you're passionate about it, then it's going to eventually work in your favor, once you get caught up.
And then
As
you
for
never
me,
know.
oh,
Yeah, with that
sorry.
first series, you might as well, before trying to psychoanalyze the first series
Yes.
before you've even written it, do what you love first, see how it does, and then you can decide. Because there's a lot of people that do find success after that. They're like, my first thing was middle grade, Nancy Drew rematches in a sci-fi setting, and it sounded really cool, but it didn't sell. And then they went on to like, whatever, YA dystopian and killed it. So, but just try the first series, do what's fun. Don't worry about it too much for the first one.
Yeah, exactly. My first series was middle grade, and I couldn't imagine myself writing anything after I was done with that series. And I was passionate and excited about it. And I have made money on it, but not as much as others. It did teach me how everything operated, though. Okay, so my genres are actually very different. So I don't cross the streams. The only exception is fantasy. So if I write fantasy for kids versus adults, then I do tell my adult readers and the adults who read only kid books about them, just because it works, that way. But I never tell my fantasy readers about my romance, because most of them don't care, and obviously I don't tell my fiction readers about my nonfiction, because they're like, I don't want to know anything about that. Yeah, anyway, so our next question is from Del Cell. Let's see. I saw an old comment from you about novellas. Is anyone buying them at the low 99 cents to $1.99 price points? Is the sales lifespan of a short work just too short to bother with unless they are bundled?
So I started out doing more novellas and short stories just because when I started, it took me longer to write a novel. In my first series, they were all over 100,000 words too. So I was like, well, let me try. I did a series of novellas, that was my most legitimately steampunk thing, even if it was set in like the Yukon during the gold rush instead of like Victorian England. But I would say that I've since veered away from that, in part because I write faster now, so it really doesn't take me all that much longer to do a novel than like a 30 or 40,000 word novella, whereas I can charge a lot more for a novel and will make more because of the 70% royalty. I do think you can sell novellas, there's certainly, and look in your specific genre too, see is that common? Like, are there novellas, are they doing well? Are they not calling themselves novellas? Are they just 80, 90, 100 page ebooks that are out there? I think you'll have the biggest success if you're going to do the shorter fiction with a series of novellas or like serial installments. I hardly ever do anything that I don't feel I can sell for $2.99 because of the 70% royalty, with an exception being a lead-in book one, where I'm willing to not make very much on that in order to possibly get more people in the series at full price. And that's just, like I said, it's, you may be different. I think Joe does short stories more easily than I do. I just end up spending just as much time like coming up with the idea for a short story and executing it as a novel. I mean, not literally, but it's not like orders of magnitude more time for me to write a novel than to write like 8,000 word short story. So I find that the best use of my time is to do novels. But like I said, if you're not that fast yet, you know, or I mean, because I certainly wasn't starting out. I've told the story how the first novel took 7 years. That can be a way to kind of get stuff out there, keep things going, keep reader interest alive. If it's taking you maybe a year to write a novel, but you can do a couple of short stories that tie into the novel and maybe keep people interested, that may be more of a reason to do it than the money. Because even if you sell like 1,000 copies of a novella at 99 cents, it's only about, you know, $300 in your pocket. I wrote $3 in your pocket in my notes. It's not that bad, you know, compared to like if you do the longer novel and sell it at $4.99, right? You're making $3.70 or whatever it is per book, versus 35 cents. So it's just kind of doing the calculations, how fast you write, you know, how much of a, would you be better off working on a novel that you can sell for more? But you know, if you are going to do it, tying it in with a series, or but I will say, don't do a novella then call it 5.5 in a series, which I somehow did in 2 separate series. I was just like, I need a novella with a side character for here, and yet I wanted to tie in with the main series and for people to read it. For one thing, you still can't put that on the series sales page on Amazon, and I don't think on the other stores either. So you end up with a lot of people missing it just because they didn't know it existed. So yeah, do you guys have thoughts on that? I think that's all I've got on it.
I have found, like, I've got a fair number of novellas for sale, and typically speaking, I don't make any money on them being for sale. I'll put them up because I've already made my money from them, because I use novellas and stuff on Patreon. They do tend to just be a thing that people don't even realize exists, and you can sort of let them know. One of the weird side effects of this ad that I'm running right now is that people are like, you know, I'm getting new people coming through who I can see from the affiliate links are going through and buying a bunch of the old novellas. Like, oh, I own all these. Oh, but that's I've never seen that before. So they tend to be sort of an add-on thing. Also, they tend to be, in my case, a lot more useful as like a newsletter builder than a thing to sell. So they're always an afterthought for sale for me.
Yeah, and for me, like novellas and short stories don't usually end up making a whole lot of money for me, but I think I've mentioned this before like 30 times probably. I do use them as incentives to join my newsletter list, or as don't download bonuses, and just like my most recent series that is a novella series that I did for Patreon is only available on my website, and so I get, you know, 98% of downloads on that, and I do have people that download it regularly, not frequently. And so, I mean, there's a lot of different ways. And also, some readers really hate short fiction and some love short fiction. And like what Lindsay said, just see what your genre is doing. There's several subcategories and subgenres in romance where novellas, like 20,000 word novellas to 30,000 word novellas, is where the money is at. And so, I mean, just do a little bit of research and see what, you know, see what works for your genre, and also what makes you happy.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, so we got a question from Sarah K. Wilson. Do you still find that long, that's say 6-book plus series, are the best overall earnings, or are shorter series better these days?
Hi, Sarah. Are you the Sarah K. Wilson that writes the Dragon Academy books and was a guest on our other show? I think so. So you know all about long series and serial kind of stuff. But I would say I'm starting to like having a mix of both in my backlist. Last year, I've talked about this a few times. I had good luck boxing up 2 5-book series into complete sets and selling them on Amazon in KU. That was sort of the last hurrah for those series before I took them wide. Like I've taken my Heritage of Power series out and just made it wide and bumped it up to $9.99 everywhere. But they did that one in particular did really well, and it's very appealing to the reader to get a complete trilogy or a complete series in one of those bundles. I feel that's just way more appealing to them and more effective as far as how many sales you get than like a books 1 through 3, which can also be effective. But boy, if you can say complete trilogy or complete series and in a bundle, you know, that's like a win for somebody that just wants to grab them all. And I would say that's definitely a right now tactic that's working, where KU is a thing, and where right now you can get credit for up to 3,000 KENPC. I think that's what the pages is, and that may change tomorrow. So I wouldn't necessarily base your writing strategy on that. It's just something I saw working for people, so I took advantage of it because I happen to have those 2 5-book series anyway. But you know, even if you do a trilogy box, it's still something that can be bundled up later, and it can be $9.99 and do some. You can do a sale at $2.99 with a book club ad or something like that if you can get one. I still do, of course, love the longer series also. I don't do super long. Mine usually end up around 8 books. And I've talked about how 9 would be smarter before, since you can do three book bundles that way. But you're not necessarily going to want to put 9 books into one bundle to make a complete series unless they're shorter novels. Because like I actually just did this where I put 9 novels and a novella into a box set because I had a cover for it from before, where I was going to make it $19.99 on the sites like Kobo that allow you to still get 70% royalty even above $9.99. And I hadn't gotten around to putting it out there yet. And I actually ended up just giving it away to my list, this last email list, or emailing with the new book, just as like, hey, I know you're stuck at home and maybe you don't have a lot of money right now. So here's this series if you just want it all in one place, or if you haven't read it yet. And got like 1,000 people so far have taken advantage of that, just using BookFunnel. So, but in general, like a 9-book series or even more, if the read through is good, and that's key. Oh my gosh, I've run into people who have kept going and going in a series, even though people fall off after 1 and don't go on to 2. So that's something to consider when you're deciding how long you want your series to be. But if the read through is good, it can be a real cash cow. It's the kind of thing that allows you to afford to spend more advertising book 1. Or even like I do sometimes give away books 1 through 3 in a box set for free if I can get a book bub on them, because if you've got 6 more or more full price books to follow, that can be very profitable. And with the way the bids is how they have been on Amazon this year, it makes sense to have a long series like that. So maybe you can afford to spend $10 getting a new reader if they're ultimately going to put $40 in your pocket. So I like a mix of both, I guess. I do like to gauge how well the series, opening books into a series, are doing before I commit to like something super long. I've started getting to where I make plans for both. I could stop this at 5 if I want to, or if it seems to be doing well, I can go on and do more. Who's next?
Sorry, I'm like fumbling. I'm like trying to get my fingers on the right keys. And I was gonna say, with the long series, like some authors, I've noticed they're able to shorten a series. So if like what Lindsay was kind of going around right there, like if it's going to be originally a 6-book series and it's not selling well, they shorten it to 3 series. And I've never been able to do that. Like I don't know. It's just I don't know. Sometimes I'm like, screw royalties. I need to tell the story. So I do this partly because it's something I'm passionate about, but it's also because, I do make money, but I want to be able to tell stories and do justice to these characters. And so even though something isn't currently selling well, I don't end the series, because I've found that like I've said before, I'm able to make more money off of a series later after it's had some time to just kind of sit, And so I don't know, like, that's how it's been for me. And so I prefer longer series. I like reading longer series, and I like writing longer series. And so I think it's going to depend on what each specific author, what works best for them. And Joe, did you have anything you wanted to add to that?
It's tricky for me because all of my series are technically ongoing. I will let you know how I feel about long series once I finish up the current 3 series that I'm working on. The only series I have that's less than 5 is the urban fantasy, which I didn't write any new entries before because it was doing poorly. So I got to try to rethink that before I make. But that's even plotted for 5. So yeah, I don't have any points of reference besides the long ones.
That's awesome. Okay, so unless Lindsay has anything else to add to that, I'm going to go ahead and go to the next question.
I just wanted to make the point that like the person I specifically had in mind who wrote like 15 books and wasn't selling any of them, if it's your first series, I would probably not go long, because your weakest book is probably the first book that you publish, just because you're new as a writer and you're learning. And so that can be tough, because you would be like, I have a friend right now that's editing someone's series, and she's like, wow, my author's really improving and doing great. She's like on book 4 or 5, but the first one was her first and weaker. So it's like, well, nobody's going to give it a shot if that first one didn't, drive them. So, and you have to decide too. Like, are you still having fun with the characters? How much does the money matter? Is it a hobby? Is it, are you doing okay? No matter, like, I'm still doing okay with my my urban fantasy series, even if it didn't kill it. It's still making money. So I'm not like, oh man, I got to wrap this up at 5 books, or something. It's not that situation, but I've seen that for some people. So it's just something to keep in mind, if how much money matters. And could you do better with something else, you know? And also you can put it aside too for a while if you want to start something new without killing everybody necessarily to end the series. So that's also an option, and just see how things go.
Yeah, and especially if the series isn't selling very well, then it doesn't matter if you don't finish it for a while. You can go and cut your teeth or whatever the saying is on something else for a bit. But I mean, that's the way my first series is. The first book was pretty I don't know, like, who was it that says never disparage your own work in public? I've heard that so many times. I'm like, it wasn't the best. And I do have readers that get super offended when I say it wasn't that good. But honestly, by book 6, I'd really hit my stride, and that was the end of the series. And 6 books was a lot of effort to put into something when people weren't reading the first book. And so I definitely agree with that. Don't make a 15-book series when it's your first series. Okay, so we have a question from Dennis Stevenson. You've said you like snarky characters, and I enjoy them. When I've read your books, they seem to have a very Lindsay voice or brand. I hope he's not saying all of your characters are Lindsay. I don't think so. I haven't noticed that. What have you tried to do to create that voice? Plotting, characterization, something else?
To some extent, especially with the humor, that's just me and my sense of humor. I will say that when I was starting writing, I remember I got scripts, a book of scripts for like the sitcom Frasier. So this was like 20 years ago. And I just, you know, because that's like that sitcom, probably the first 4 seasons or so. I was just like, wow, the writing is amazing. It's so witty. It's, you know, it's so well done. Not every episode is a bomb, but, you know, is bomb good or bad these days? I don't know with the slang. Something, it's da bomb. If it's just a bomb, I think it's bad. But anyway, so definitely studying a little bit, kind of seeing how people would set up jokes, and that's a lot of the humor, is like you have to like create situations that are either inherently funny or something about them can be funny with the clashing of characters. But I will feel that sometimes a character will seem flat to me, and sometimes it's a matter of like, maybe I need to give them some interesting quirks, because people have quirks. You know, we're all interesting people in our own way, and that can create a lot of joke fodder, especially if it's in opposition to something else another character would like. Or just like one of my space opera side characters in my Fallen Empire series, he's basically just a grunt. You know, he's like the security guard guy on the ship, but I gave him his passion is barbecue grilling. So he's always got his barbecue grill out when they're on the, you know, landing on the different planets. And his dream in the world is like to bottle and sell his own sauces and have an empire someday of barbecue sauces. And it was a lot of fun for jokes. And you probably know that person that they're like a foodie, and they have a blog, and they hope to be on the next Food Network star one day. So people have a lot of quirks. So giving some of those kind of things to your characters can really help give them a lot of personality and make them more memorable. So.
And can I make a comment on that?
Sure.
If you have a character who isn't memorable and who isn't exciting, like maybe more straight-laced and boring, then put them into a situation that is quirky and just see what happens, you know?
Well, those are the great characters for the straight man, funny man setup. That was very much my first series. My assassin, Sicarius, he's just never smiles, never, you know, like he's totally humorless. That's the whole thing. And so that in itself allows somebody else to be funny. And if he twitches an eyebrow, it's like a riot of expression, and the readers are like, love that, you know? Whereas, so that can work too. There's just, if comedies is something you'd like to do, there's a lot of great stuff out there to study. Not saying that's the only way to, you know, make interesting characters. Just whatever, you know, like I said, a few quirks, you know, there's character sheets out there that ask you to do. They're kind of silly, but, you know, they'll ask you like, what happened to your hero in 4th grade that stamped them for life, kind of thing. And so I just think taking the time to think about some of your background stuff with your character and things that they are driven towards can help them become more real.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, so this one is from L. Darby Gibbs. This is for Lindsay and possibly Joe. What do you suggest for an introvert who really doesn't do well on social media? What baby steps can you suggest? I go in spurts and disappear because it doesn't feel comfortable.
Yeah, this is not for Andrea. She is not allowed to answer any introvert questions. So
that's awesome. I'm sitting here laughing in private. And I'm like, oh, I should probably let people know I'm not offended by that.
I would say kind of figure out what is something that you can do that you don't hate, that maybe you kind of have fun with, that can also be a little bit of marketing and a little bit building your brand. I joked with Kitty KM Shea when she came on our show for that Ladies Who Launch episode. You know, she was talking about how she hangs out on Discord with her readers and she does videos and chats with them and stuff. And I was like horrified because that's so not me, but it's actually awesome that she can do that. And she has this really great connection with her readers. But I don't know if it's just an introvert thing or what, but I definitely like to keep people more at arm's length. Like I got to have my private space, not just physically in the house, but like online too. You know, I don't want to be, part of it is that with the relationship with the readers, I don't handle criticism very well. Like it can really depress me for the day. And even praise makes me feel a little awkward. I try to be like suave about accepting praise, but I still have a lot of that imposter syndrome kind of feeling. And I'm like, oh, my thought is more to downplay it. And just, like I said, I'll feel awkward by it. So what I can have learned that I can handle is doing the Facebook author page. And I've talked about before, I'll post snippets of stuff I'm working on. I've also gotten into posting the dragon housewares, I would say, home improvement, I don't know, dragon toilet paper holders, anything funny I can just find while surfing at Etsy. It really doesn't take very long for me to find that stuff. And it's something, I don't know, it's kind of fun for me because it blends two of my passions, because I've talked about before, I used to do content writing for the web on home improvement stuff. So I've always, I don't know, dragon toilet paper holders seems super fun for me. And I share it on Facebook. And that was one of my posts that kind of went viral. And it's on brand. It's probably not going to sell books for me, but it's something to post. Like if you're struggling, like you're between books, you know, you don't have a launch coming up anytime soon. I get that it can be hard to figure out what you're supposed to post to keep these pages alive. And the Facebook page is one that works for me. Some people that are more into like photographs really get big onto Instagram. I think we've all agreed that nobody sells any books on Twitter. That's more of a networking one that's kind of hard to sell books on. But and then the younger, I think, is a Snapchat that's more the YA. I don't know. I have no idea what teenagers are into these days. Unfortunately, I don't write for them, so I don't have to be those places. But if there's one of those social media sites you can get into that also has the potential to be a place where you can put links to your books and sell when you're ready, you know, I find that as an introvert, I find that not too difficult to like somebody's comments, and I'll batch it. Like I'm not going to jump on Facebook all hours of the day. Like it's like, these are the 3 days a week I'm going to go on there. And that I happen to be in the mood. I'm standing in line, although not right now. There are no lines that I'm standing in right now. Maybe I'm walking the dog, you know, and I got my old one that's just like, she's got to sniff the mailbox for 5 minutes. I'm like, this is my time. I'm going to go and like people's comments and, you know, reply if I need to. But I certainly have times of the day, times of the week where I'm more inclined to be social online versus just holding up and working on my stuff. And interestingly, I've seen quite a few introverts that actually get into making videos on Facebook, which seems kind of crazy, but if you think about it, you're talking to your computer. You're not really, you know, doing anything with anybody else necessarily. And I think Chris Fox has mentioned before that he's a pretty hardcore introvert, but he's, you know, built up this successful YouTube channel. And his thing is for authors, but I think we sometimes poo-poo that doing stuff for authors is no good for selling your fiction books, but authors are the people who you want to connect with, who are going to mail your book to their newsletter, you know, or mention it on their Facebook page. So that's not I wouldn't dismiss that out of hand as like, that doesn't have any value. But we've also seen people that are introverts and do YouTube channels for on authory things, you know, book review channels, if that's something exciting to you. So I think we'll bring up the Venn diagram again, you know, trying to find the things that can be effective for marketing versus the things that you are kind of okay with maybe doing regularly. Even if it's not like your favorite entire thing in the whole world, is it something you can do that only takes a few minutes a day or even less, a few minutes, a few times a week? Go ahead, guys.
I was going to say, in the defense of, you know, extroverts, I mean, online, there's a lot of people who you would watch online and you would totally think they're an extrovert, but in real life they're not. Online, I think it totally takes out personalities, because I mean, you get people who are like way extroverted and they're always talking, but then I also know people who are way introverted and they're always talking and they're always commenting and liking and interacting with things on Facebook. And I'm like 93% extroverted and I hate social media because, like what Lindsay said, criticism. Like I post something on Facebook and inevitably somebody's going to disagree. And it's like, or they're going to be like, have you tried this? Or why aren't you doing this? And it just makes me feel, I hate the way it makes me feel. And so I tend to avoid Facebook. I tend to avoid social media. I'll post in my groups. I'll do things here and there, but I don't like online interaction. And so for an extrovert, it's a lot of the same problems. Like you need to figure out how to present yourself in a way where you feel comfortable and where that criticism's not going to tear you down and ruin you for the day, and then like, I mean, Joanna Penn is an introvert. I didn't even know Lindsay Broker was an introvert until she said she was an introvert. And so it's really hard to tell when it comes to social media. And I think everybody has to deal with a lot of that the crippling, the anxiety that does come with, I need feedback for this, but then I'm inevitably going to get really stupid opinions too.
Yeah, there's always the people that like, you're like, no book is out, yay! And then like, well, I'm not really into your new series. Could you please go write some more books in your Dragon Blood series? I'm like, no, I'm working on this series right now, but thanks for letting me know you're not into it.
That's when you punch people.
No, that's when I complain to my friends, and fortunately they're very nice, and they're like, yeah, that person sucks. Obviously they don't, but it's just like you get it a lot. Like the more you sell, the more books you have out there, the more. And I've always felt Ilana Andrews, they have a big blog and they get a lot of that. They get a lot of crazy stuff, and sometimes they share it. Those guys are super popular, so I can't even imagine. I think a lot of introverts though, and maybe extroverts too, do still have the fantasy of like, I wish I could just write the books and then hand them off to somebody else to do all this stuff. Like maybe the money's better self-publishing, but there are days when you're like, yeah. And
I think that's human nature. Just let me do what I love. I don't want to do anything else.
One thing also you can do is maybe Sunday or Saturday or something can be your day to prepare all your social media posts for the week. And then the rest of the week you can just hold up and write. So that's a thought too. It's kind of, because I know I have some days where I'm just like more okay with it. Like I'm like, today's podcast day, I got to go talk anyway. So this will be my admin day. So that's my thoughts on that. Joe, did you want to chime in too?
Yeah, I'll just say if you're not comfortable like leading a conversation, sometimes you can just ask a question and a conversation start. That happens particularly well on Facebook, where you'll just sort of present a question. It doesn't even have to be about your stuff. It could be say, hey, what's your favorite sci-fi movie? Possibly not that one because people have strong opinions about sci-fi movies, but like if you're not comfortable with being the person that everyone is talking to, you can just introduce a topic and let everyone talk to themselves. And for social media in particular, engagement is what gets your stuff visible, so that's helping you, and you don't have to do very much for it. And also, if you're definitely interested in something, because everyone's interested in something, and if you're passionate about that, you can just share links about that as long as it's somewhat relevant to your brand. That's basically what Lindsay was saying.
Everybody's passionate about Dragon toilet paper holders. They just don't know it yet.
Okay, so I guess we'll try to quickly, because we're at the hour. Questions that we had for Lindsay. So I'll start. It's fair to say most people out there got into this business because they enjoyed writing. You don't get into writing because you think you're going to get rich right away. Do you find that depending on writing as your income has sapped your enjoyment from it, or do you still write for fun?
I definitely have days where the admin stuff kind of bogs me down. Everything from answering emails to just getting the book ready. Everything is like going back and forth with the cover artist. I still format everything and put it up myself. It's just easier. I guess I'm enough of a control freak that I don't want to hand my passwords over to other people. But so I still do all that stuff myself. And that feels more like a job, and it's something a little more onerous than I've talked about how I actually enjoy the days where I don't open my email at all, and all I do is write it. And that's not to say it always comes out great. We've been talking about how right now it can be a struggle to be as productive as maybe you were 2 months ago. But I really enjoy being able to write stories for a living. And I actually, back when I just did it for fun, I never finished anything. Like, I don't think I ever got a novel past 30,000 words. I'd write until I got tired of the story, or I'd just write the scenes that were fun, and then I'd wander off for a while. And then I'd come back and start something else. The next time I read some book that got me excited. So I never really finished anything when I was just writing for fun. It was once I had goals, and the first goal was just to finish a novel. I went through an online writing workshop where we posted a chapter and got critiques at a time, and I got to the end. I actually finished the last chapter on there, and then I had the goal to sell a couple short stories to magazines. This is kind of pre-Kindle, and then the goal was to get an agent and get published, which that route didn't exactly happen, but it was a goal that drove me. And then the goal was, when I started self-publishing, to actually sell books and make some money. And I certainly look a lot more motivated to write now that there's money that comes in. It's like with anything. It's like, if you're rewarded in some way, I find it motivating too when people say they really love the stories, but I would like that and the money, as long as we're being clear. I would like both things, please. I find that makes me write a lot. And I wish, I think I've talked about this earlier. I still write fun things. I don't ever write a series if the idea doesn't excite me. I have not. And, I feel fortunate because I feel like maybe some people have not had as much success with what they're passionate about, and they've felt more compelled to try to do writing to market, which can be okay if you're excited about the thing that's selling. But if you have to force yourself to write, I've certainly run into people who are like, well, erotica was the only thing I could get to sell, so now I'm stuck writing erotica. It's obviously a better situation if you enjoy erotica anyway, and that's just happened to be the most profitable of the three things you could have picked to write. But that's I've always picked things like, I may pick one thing, may gauge like which of these is more commercial that I'm interested in doing, and I'll pick the more commercial one. So, but I it's got to be fun. I really struggle if I'm not having fun with the story. That's when it becomes more of a slog to get the words down.
That's pretty nail on head on the nail. What is it? Whatever that saying is.
You hit the nail on the head, which
Yes.
I don't do. Despite my interest in blogging about home improvement stuff, I'm actually pretty lousy at all. Repair things around the house.
That's awesome. But it's true. And if you find yourself bored about what you're writing, dear listener, you all know this, then find a way to make it exciting. Okay, so you've mentioned health problems in the past, and listeners may remember your comments about your cute, sweet dog. I don't know if you give names on the air, but needing a lot of doctor attention. My question is, how have you handled disruptions to your writing schedule and goals, especially when it comes to your health and energy levels?
Willow is fine with me giving out her name. She's not too worried about her privacy. In fact, she's very bummed about social distancing and isolation because, like, I don't know how I got an extrovert dog, but boy, this dog loves everybody.
She's so cute.
So I think we've kind of talked before about health stuff a little bit, and I feel that it is kind of hard to accept that some days you just, man, like that was me yesterday. I was like, I was writing from bed, because I was just like, this is just too much work to like be at the desk or be on the couch. The couch was hard. And I pay a lot of attention to my diet and try to be pretty spot on there, because once that stuff strays away, I get a lot worse with everything from mood to like joint pain. And, I've had all these issues that someday I'll actually get like a legit diagnosis for something. But I'm one of those people right now. They're like, yeah, a few things are off here and there, but don't worry about it. You're fine. You're fine. I'm like, someday, that stuff. I know you, Andrea, have like autoimmune disease, and that stuff. That's one of those things where it can be like 10 years before you actually are bad enough to get a diagnosis, or before things really show up. So we'll see. I'm just trying to stay as healthy as I can, but I've definitely had to accept that some days it's got to be okay. And I'm really hard about, I have a bad habit of beating myself up if I don't meet my goals. So I try, sometimes early on in the day, I have to like adjust what my goal is going to be for that day. And on the day I'm feeling good, it's like, I went for a run and I wrote 10,000 words, which I haven't had that day for a while now. I just like, yep, that's awesome. Probably the next day is not going to be as good, but I try to take advantage of it when I am feeling good. And I do have like a day that's kind of blocked off without much going on. Those are my favorite days. So the one nice thing about writing and producing books is it's a cumulative thing. It's not like I have to put in 8 hours every day, or 10 hours, or however many hours, or even 3 hours, 2 hours, you're working part-time. You may not get that much done on any one particular day, but I always like to be working toward a goal. And that's why I'm a big fan of word count, or just keeping track of chapters if I'm editing, because I love working towards a goal and finishing and completing something. I get bogged down in the admin stuff because you never complete it. It's just, there's more. You answer an email and they email you back and you're like, why did you email me back so soon? Couldn't you have waited a day so I could get my inbox empty for now? But yeah, I think that realizing that it's just over time, you're going to have more books written and more in your list, and you're going to gradually build up a bigger fan base, and not worrying too much about like if the day sucked or this week sucked or this. I was joking with our band writers here in Oregon. I was like, yeah, guys, March was just going to be the lost month. That's how it's going to be. And I was like, probably 2020 is going to be the lost year is how it's going to be for a lot of people looking back. But yeah, just trying to, if you can plug away a little bit every day, that helps. And eventually you have a novel, and then you have a series. So that's my thoughts there.
Yeah, that's really good. And when you say you give yourself permission to adjust your goal, are these like written goals, or are they just your everyday goal?
Not written. I'm not I'm in the weeds if I have to sit down and make a to-do list, which sometimes happens, but usually, and I sometimes make a to-do list, but usually I'd like to have one goal for the day. That's why I often will have this is a writing day, this is an admin day, and then on the admin day, there may be 8 things I have to get done within that admin framework, but yeah, I don't know. I'm not that organized, so I try to keep it simple and not give myself a whole lot of things to do, because then it seems more stressful versus just this is the thing for today. And then if I get that thing done, I'll feel that I accomplished good things.
And Joe, did you have anything you wanted to add?
Nope.
That's simple enough. All right. Well, we're going to go ahead and wrap things up. I get to take the baby to a doctor appointment right now. So anyway, yeah, thank you, Lindsay, so much for letting us interview you, for humoring us in allowing us to interview you.
Thank you. Don't forget, you guys are coming up next.
Where did you want to point anybody in anywhere particular? I mean, we give our guests that opportunity, so here's yours.
No, not really. You guys can find me. If you spell my name, Lindsay Baroker, anywhere close to that, I'll come up on Google. There's my website and Amazon page or Google Play page, or, I've just released a new series, Why the Heritage of Power stuff. People were looking for that. And my new urban fantasy series is Death Before Dragons, if you feel compelled to check that out. But we are just happy that you guys listen, and hopefully we're giving you something to listen to while you're stuck at home doing home improvement projects or whatever you're doing this week.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. So let's go ahead and wrap up then. Thank you so much, everyone, for listening. And thank you to Joshua Pearson for producing the show. You can find the show notes, or if you have a question or a comment, you can go to sixfigureauthors.com with the number 6 and leave it there. Alternatively, which is what most everybody has been doing, just join our Facebook group and post there. Then you can get opinions from other authors as well as opinions from us if one of us happens to see the post. Things have been going fast there. I have a hard time keeping up. Anyway, sorry.
Yeah,
what were
I
you
was just going to add, this weekend, I wasn't on Facebook this weekend. I was having a writing weekend and a checking out of social media weekend. So we really do appreciate it when you guys answer each other's questions. And I try to get caught up on when I'm not standing in line. But what is it I'm doing now? When the dog is sniffing the mailbox, I try to get caught up.
Oh, dogs. My babies don't tend to sniff things very much. They put things in their mouths, though dogs do that too. Anyway.
Yes. Gross things.
Yes. Okay. All right, everyone. We will talk to you all later. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye, everybody.